I've been getting more and more questions about this, so today we are finally talking about tripods. More specifically, the new Vortex Switchback Carbon that they just released. Today's episode is brought to you by BTO Gear, which is a sister company of Big Tex Ordnance. It's just a way for them to offer non-firearm products, while they are still firearm related, but non-firearm products without being regulated by Google and having all their stuff pushed down in search engines. So it's an easier way for people to find what they're looking for. And I will have a link down below in the description, along with coupon code that works on most things on the website. So as more of you have been getting into scope carbine and precision shooting, one of the topics that continues to come up is tripods. And a lot of you have seen that I've been running the Really Right stuff, have asked, is it worth the price? Is it worth the money? Because it is an expensive tripod, coming in at around $1,500, $1,600. That is a big chunk to bite off for a lot of you, especially as you're spending money on ammo and optics and all these other things. Now, there are a few other really good options out there, namely the 2Vets tripod, but I think you're coming in at around $600 or $700, plus you have to buy whatever head you're looking for to go on there. And up until now, that was kind of the best value option. But with Vortex's new Switchback Carbon Tripod, I think this is probably the best value on the market for what you're getting out of it. Now, before we dive into this tripod specifically, I want to talk to you about what to look for in tripods. So as you're looking, maybe you don't want this, maybe you don't want the Really Right stuff, maybe you're looking at some other brands. So I'm going to give you a quick buyer's guide just so you know what you're looking for and what's important in these tripods. Now, if you want to skip all this and get straight to the Vortex, you can use the chapter markers at the bottom, go all the way to the end. So tripod technology has largely been advanced by the camera market. As cinema cameras got bigger, as they got heavier, the need for better tripods increased, right? So that we started developing new tripods. We got away from the aluminum legs, went to carbon fiber. Now we have double-legged carbon fiber all the way around. So it's continued to progress. The heads have gotten better. The fluid heads, ball heads, all that was pushed by the camera market. And a lot of that is carried over so that the shooting community has looked at that. That's where we kind of got our tripods from originally. But we've looked at that and gone, okay, what are the best features? How can we apply that to shooting? And started making tripods based around those or based off of those features, just improving where we needed. So the most important thing is going to be material. What is the tripod made out of? What are the legs made out of? Almost all shooting tripods now are made out of carbon fiber. It's for a couple of reasons, but namely its strength. Now, carbon fiber is just really high-tech string and glue. At its most rudimentary level, that's what it is. And what gives carbon fiber its strength is that you have the fibers or the strings and you weave them together in different patterns, and that will give you the strength. Now, with carbon fiber, there's another thing called compliance, and you can't make carbon fiber super rigid. It has to have some give, some flexibility somewhere. Otherwise, it would break. And the best example we have for this currently is F1 cars. So if you ever look at the front wings or rear wings of F1 cars under high speed, under high aerodynamic load, the carbon fiber wings will actually start to flex or bend back. That's by design. It's called compliance. It's designed to give in the carbon fiber, because if not, eventually that high-tech glue would eventually begin to break and crack, and the wings would fall apart, or when they bump into each other, they would just shatter to pieces. It would be very brittle. So it has to have some give in there. Why this matters is that there is ultimately going to be some give in all carbon fiber tripods. So they're not all going to be perfectly super rigid, right? So for example, I have this camera tripod, and as you can see, the diameter of the legs get different, and one thing they've done is to keep it lighter, they've tried to change the shape of the legs. Rather than using a circular shape, like a cylinder, they've started to add in some different things to try to add rigidity, but also to shave a little bit of weight and keep the form factor down. But what happens is you get more compliance in here, and it flexes a whole lot more. Now, in comparison, I will show you the leg from the Really Right stuff. So obviously thicker diameter legs, much less flex in there. So keep that in mind, that carbon fiber is ultimately going to have some level of flex, but you can get around it with the diameter of the legs. Now that's the next thing we're gonna get into. So the diameter of the Really Right stuff is obviously thicker than that of the Switchback from Vortex. Again, this is a way to add strength without adding too much weight and without having too rigid of a carbon fiber layup. The reason that this matters, the reason that the carbon fiber layup, the reason that the diameter of the legs matters is because it ultimately affects how stable we're able to get when shooting off of a tripod. Now, if you're using a tack board like the MUB, or if you're clipping directly into the head and you're shooting off of it, if the tripod has a lot of compliance, if it has a lot of give in those legs, it's going to be harder to keep that as stable as possible, especially when you have heavier guns on there. Like if you're shooting a bolt gun on there, like a competition bolt gun, it's going to be a lot of weight on there. It's going to put a lot of stress in those legs. It's going to flex them. And essentially the legs are going to start to act like springs. It's going to want to bounce. Also in recoil, as we're shooting, particularly with gas guns that tend to recoil a little bit more, or the recoil impulse is a little bit different, you're gonna see more bouncing in that tripod versus having one that is more stable, that's a little bit stiffer, bigger diameter legs, better carbon layup. So very important that you have a good quality tripod with good legs to be able to mitigate the bounce and the recoil coming from the gun that you're shooting. So it's pretty much a given across the board that we're gonna be using carbon fiber. I think almost all shooting tripods are carbon fiber at this point. Very rarely do companies make them from aluminum at this point. The other downside with aluminum, which doesn't really apply to our application, but metal fatigue is a thing, and aluminum can give without any signs of warning. In carbon fiber, you can see where it'll start to crack. You can hear it. It'll start to creak and crack as it wears over time. And essentially, it's the glue between the fibers breaking up. So you'll start to get signs of it that it's going to break at some point before it just catastrophically fails. With aluminum, it can give without any sign of metal fatigue, any visible sign. So it'll just look completely normal, and then one day it'll just completely, it's one of the downsides to metal, but it is what it is. So most tripods are gonna be carbon fiber. You're gonna have carbon fiber legs. Really, you're just looking at the quality of carbon fiber layup and then the diameter. Now, once you are settled on that, the other thing that we're starting to see more and more is more and more tripod companies are using the same leg lock system, which is the twist. One reason is that it allows them to easily and quickly deploy. So like I can do both of these at the same time and deploy both legs. And then once they're collapsed, I just turn them back and I can lock both at the same time. One of the older styles that we don't see this on camera tripods anymore because it's kind of a bad design is they found over time, when you use these latches, eventually the tolerances open up in them and there's not really a good way to tighten them down. And because it's a clamping force, on certain carbon fiber legs, it'll start to crack them because you're putting too much stress and too much pressure on them. So the twist lock is actually better. So if you're looking at a tripod and it has these, I would say try to stay away from it, go with something that has the twist lock. From there, we go to the head. Now the head of the tripod is gonna be the most important part of your tripod because it's ultimately what interacts with your spotting scope, your shooting platform, with the gun itself. So having a good head is gonna be the most important. I feel like there's gonna be a bunch of jokes from this video, but having a good head is gonna be the most important part. Now, initially, I've had the Radian carbon tripod from Vortex, and I do like this, but I think this is a better spotting scope than it is a shooting scope. There's just too much going on with it. It's got a fluid ball head. You've got a ton of adjustments. So if you're using this as a dedicated spotting scope and you're spotting all the time from a straight eyepiece or an angled eyepiece, this is great because it makes getting those fine adjustments really spot on, especially when you're at high magnification at far distances. This makes it super easy. Or if you're locked in on binos and you want to pan. So if you're the type of person that clips in your binos and you want to pan with it, this is also a great option, but just not great for shooting on. It's big, it's bulky, it's lunky. Like look at the footprint of that versus the new Radian. Much smaller, easier to pack away, much lighter because you have a lot less metal on it. So if you're hiking with this, if you're in backcountry, if you're doing NRL hunter, if you are actually hunting, if you have to walk from stage to stage, if you have to travel with this in a case, every pound counts when you're trying to meet that weight requirement because we already have oversized cases. So this makes a big difference and it very closely replicates the Really Right Stuff head. The thing that I like about the Really Right Stuff, there's a couple of things that I like about the Really Right Stuff. One, the thing that nobody is, and I think this is their patented piece, is how it actually locks up. The way that it clamps in, it's a quick lock and then a quick release. So this is probably the best head on the market, which is why it is so expensive. Nobody's really been able to compete with it, to beat it, and it'll lock into both Picatinny and to Arca. So it mounts to whatever you've got, it will work. And it's a phenomenal head, really is the best in the market, it is the gold standard. The other really nice feature about it is that you have this lever here, and the way that I like to use it and a lot of other shooters do as well is we kind of half open this when the gun is in there, and then we will level out the gun, level out our optic on whatever target we're on, or if we have to move from target to target when we're clipped in, and then simply close it and you're locked in, good to go. Vortex have done a very similar thing with theirs. So if I can get this here on camera. So it's the same type of lever. I use it, I've been using it the same way where I'll half open it and then I can kind of move the head around whichever angle I want it, get my gun locked into position where I need it, and then close it and I'm on target. And then if I need to transition to a different target, I simply open it, move the gun, level it out, good to go. Now the big difference is gonna be in what I said earlier about the Really Right Stuff is that it is the gold standard when it comes to the lockup. This is just going to use a knob. So that's the only way you're gonna be able to tighten and loosen it. Take your plate out, go back in there, and this is only gonna work with Arca. It's not gonna work with Picatinny. That is a little bit of a downside to the Vortex versus the Really Right Stuff, But the big difference is this is a third of the price of the Really Right stuff. So I don't know the exact retail price, but I'm hearing rumors that it's gonna sell for around $600. So keep an eye out for that. I'll have a link down below because when this video goes live, these will be available. But I'm hearing it's gonna be around 600 bucks. And so for the Really Right stuff that sells for around $1,500 to $1,600, this is substantially cheaper, a better option, I think, for most new shooters. Now, if you need the absolute best, if you got a crazy heavy gun, crazy heavy recoiling gun, you just want the best of the best, you really want the Really Right stuff head, go that route. You can also, if you wanted, get the Vortex, and when you have the money, upgrade the head to the Really Right stuff. But that's just options. That would take us to the last thing when you're looking at a tripod, which is price, right? Ultimately, what is your price point? What is your price range? If you're getting into this, into scope carbine precision shooting, you're probably already spending a lot of money on optics. You're probably spending a lot of money on ammo and a bunch of the other little things that you want to get. And so it's going to be harder to justify spending that $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 on a tripod when you could be putting that into maybe an optic or a barrel or ammo or training, whatever. So if you're looking to save some money, I would say check out the Vortex. If you absolutely need the gold standard, the absolute best of the best on the market, in my opinion, the Really Right stuff is the way to go. But let's talk a little bit more about the new switchback from Vortex. Now, as I mentioned before, this has a lot of great features that align with the Really Right stuff, which is the standard. So coming in at 600 bucks, it's gonna be really hard to beat what this tripod does. Now, you do have a max capacity and weight on this of 44 pounds, but I don't know anybody that's shooting a 44-pound gun. Maybe that's you, so maybe this knocks that out. This is a slightly larger footprint, but I think it's still small enough that you can throw it into a backpack or attach on the side of a backpack. You can still travel with this. It will still fit in Pelican cases. So if you need to fly with it, you can do that. It is actually lighter than my Really Right stuff. And even though the head has the friction head, I think this can be a benefit for some people because tolerances of Arca Swiss plates aren't always the same. Some are wider than others. So this allows you to fit different width Arca plates versus the Really Right stuff. It's kind of like, hey, whatever that fits, it fits. And to adjust that, you'd have to manually do it. You can do it, but it's kind of a pain. So this is very quick. So if you're switching from a spotting scope that has a built-in footprint, you can do that. If you can use, it comes with an Arca plate. And this, actually I talked about when I did the Arca Swiss video, I talked about how some plates have the little stops in the bottom and that those little stops will keep it from falling off. And so I'll show you here. So what those little screws do is that if I try to push it and I let it slide, it keeps it from falling out. And so that'll keep your gun from falling off. It'll keep your optic from falling off if this loosens up. So you just twist lock in there and you can swap out whatever you want on there. One additional feature that I like about the Vortex that the Really Right stuff doesn't have is that it has this adjustment here, which allows you to pan. So what I mean by that is you can loosen this, and if you're locked in and your targets are level, but you've just got to go from left to right or right to left or whatever, or if you're scanning, if you've got binos on here and you want to scan, you can just loosen that and this whole head rotates. You can't do that with the Really Right stuff. You have to loosen the lever and do it that way, but if you've ever used a ball head, you know that as soon as you loosen it, it wants to dive one way or another, and so you're like having to watch it that way. So this makes it easier to keep a steady optic and pan more smoothly. Very similar to the Radian, and it's actually one of the features I really like about the Radian. That is the Switchback Carbon. So how would I utilize this tripod? The main way that I use it in competition is spotting. If I'm 100% honest, that's what I do. We typically don't use them a lot in competition. So typically I put something like the MUB on there, and then I will throw a sandbag on there, and then I'll throw my binos on there, and I can scan, look at targets, range them, and that helps us set up our data for the match. If you're somebody who's shooting NRL Hunter, you can also do this where time is of the essence, being able to get on glass quickly, scan, and then switch to either shooting off of the tripod or using it as rear support. This will allow you to do that as well. If you're a hunter, if somebody who goes out hunting and you want to take a tripod to shoot off of, if that's your jam, this will allow you to do that as well. Because of its lightweight, because of its small footprint, I think it'll be a great option for a lot of people. The other thing is, like, tripods are becoming more and more regular at some of these matches. So maybe at like quantified performance where your shot time is very small. Like we have a 90-second par time, so we don't have a ton of time on the clock. So it's really important to be very quick. So maybe tripod doesn't necessarily make sense there. However, at the Sniper Challenge, I used tripod for rear support, and it makes a huge difference, especially in adverse conditions that are really windy and you have a hard time getting stable, or you have a super small target. being able to use that rear tripod makes a huge difference because it makes your wobble zone so much smaller, makes your follow-up shots so much easier, and it's just something that I enjoyed. Or if you're somebody who just prefers shooting off of a tripod, if that's your jam, if that's your go-to and you've got the time to do it at NRL or in a PRS match, again, solid option. So this will probably stay in my rotation as a supplement to the really rad stuff. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me to get rid of that, you know, in all honesty. I've already got it. There's no need to get rid of it. However, if I was starting over from scratch and I was looking to get a tripod and I had to pick between the two, having used them both, I'd probably go with this one just to save the money to put into other things. And the really rad stuff doesn't necessarily do anything that I need better. Doesn't mean that it's not a better tripod. It just doesn't do anything that I use it for better. I don't use it as much for it to make a difference, to notice those incremental differences. That's just my opinion. If you're somebody like Joe or some of you guys who are shooting PRS, maybe that makes a bigger difference for you. And maybe you have the budget for that, right? Because your ammo price is already way bigger than ours. So you guys are spending way more money than we are anyways. I think the Vortex is a viable option for a lot of people. So check it out if you guys are interested. Now, again, this isn't a review because I've only had this for a couple of weeks. So take it all with a grain of salt. I don't have a ton of time behind this. Only a couple of weeks. So we'll see how it does long term. But again, I think it will be a very good option for a lot of people. So if you guys found this helpful and you're interested in one, check out the link down below. Thanks to BTO Gear for sending this out so that I could take a look at it. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Karate chop the bell so you get notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you guys in the next one. I just have this thing rolling. I'm not even saying anything. Okay.